Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. My name is Caroline Heward and I'm the Harley Street Stress Expert. Our show today is Talking Heads and I'm an expert presenter in today's topic, which is osteoarthritis and your mental health. And it's part of the Mind and Body Connection series. Let's begin. I thought it'd be appropriate to start with a definition of what osteoarthritis is. It's a word that we hear a lot, and I didn't actually know what it meant for a long time. And only in my own investigations and research did I find out what the difference was. So definition, osteoarthritis, also known as OA, is a common joint disease that most often affects middle-aged elderly people. It is commonly referred to as wear and tear of the joints. In osteoarthritis, the cartilage between the bones in the joint breaks down, and this causes the affected bones to slowly get bigger. So here's a little bit more of a clearer understanding of osteoarthritis, known as OA. Osteoarthritis may result from wear and tear on the joint. So if you can see the pictures, the normal cartilage lining is gradually worn away and the underlying bone is exposed. And what happens is, because the spongy bit is worn away, the bones are actually grinding on the top of each other, which can be very painful. So let's look at the pain cycle of osteoarthritis. It starts off being muscle tension, where the bone is grinding against the other bone in the joint. And the joints tend to be knees, hips, hands, shoulders, and top of the thigh area. And so when the muscle gets tense because it's inflamed, it reduces the circulation of the blood that flows around that area in the body, which then creates a muscle inflammation. And the inflammation is essentially where it becomes very acidic. And when you move, the tenseness of the muscle in that area where there is no tissue is essentially grinding on the other bone and causing like a shudder, like a nerve pain. And then that reduces the movement, because when that nerve pain happens, it's very hard to walk or to move that particular joint. And that creates significant pain in the person, which then continues to give more muscle tension and reduce circulation. And so it continues. And so the osteoarthritis pain cycle is quite a prolific pain cycle, because it reduces your movement considerably to the point that it's so painful that it debilitates you from doing normal things that you would normally do. So I want to look at osteoarthritis and cognitive behaviour therapy. And it's something that I am very versed in. It's something that I use to help clients. And it's something that's very much part of my toolkit in terms of helping people manage their behaviours, their feelings, and their thoughts. So in osteoarthritis, there's a situation of pain. And then from the pain, because it's so severe and it's a nerve pain, so the body shudders in terms of not being able to move in that pain. And that sends signals to the brain, which then move in different directions. It creates thoughts, and the thoughts are so significant in terms of the focus of the pain that whatever we think about, we create and we make more of. So whatever we're creating, whatever we're thinking, we're creating bigger than where we were in terms of the pain. So if you're focused on pain and not being able to move and being worried about falling over or worried about not being able to do something, it creates more of that, which then moves into a feeling situation. So then you'll feel hopeless, worthless, like you can't do anything. And then it'll be very difficult to do things in your normal everyday life. So it affects then your behavior in terms of your physical being, as well as your emotional being, as well as your mental well-being, which will then have an effect on your physical and emotional reactions. And that physical, emotional reaction generally is one of hopelessness. It's one of insignificance. And it's also one of people feeling almost ashamed, especially if it happens in earlier maturehood, sort of in your early 50s or in your 40s. And I've met a lot of people that are suffering with this condition, osteoarthritis, and it doesn't mean that you are carrying weight or super thin or super big. It can affect anyone and everyone, and it is the arthritis that is much more common than the rheumatoid arthritis. Now, osteoarthritis is usually in one area or a point of area that's significant. So it could be knees, one knee, it could be your hip, one hip, both hips. It could be in your hands, in your shoulders. So it can just be in one localized or two localized areas. With rheumatoid arthritis, it's actually much more common to be in all over the body or in more places than osteoarthritis is. And so osteoarthritis is usually very, very located in one or two areas. So what happens when we're feeling this level of pain? If you can imagine, if you have toothache and the pain that you feel having toothache, it sort of affects lots of you in anything that you do. And it affects the way that you're being for yourself. It affects the way that you feel about things that you do and things that you want to do. And that in turn will affect others in terms of them being in your space, whether it be family, relationship, friendship, friends, people that you interact with on a daily basis. And so this is looking at cognitive behavior therapy is looking at why we're responding and thinking and feeling the way that we are, and why we're behaving the way that we are and reacting the way that we are, so that we can then change. At the point of being in awareness, we can change the way that we're responding, thinking, feeling, and reacting. It's only in a space of awareness that we can actually make those changes. And cognitive behavior therapy is literally looking at the behaviors, the thoughts that create the feelings, and then move you into a physical, emotional, mental behavior. And when somebody is in a great deal of pain, it will debilitate what they think about and what they do. And remember, the more that you think about the pain and the more that you think about how you can't walk or can't pick up something or can't do something, the more that then in turn creates. Everything is in the field. And so whatever we think, we create. If you think about if you need a new car and you're looking for a certain make of car, a certain colour, suddenly your world is full and you'll see that car, that colour, that make everywhere. If you, for instance, are pregnant and you're looking at you want a boy or a particular sex child, then what you'll see is everybody around you will be having a child and they've had their sex identified as a boy, and everything that you see will all be related to having a child and a boy. So whatever you're thinking about creates in your external world. And so it's important to recognize that even though we might be not well, the more that we focus on what's not working, the more that we create what's not working, and the more we debilitate the pain. So if you're only focused on the pain, that is what is created into your reality in a bigger way. So in awareness and in understanding, you can change the way that you are thinking about the pain, about the feelings that you're having, and about what you can and can't do, which will then in turn change the way that you react and the way that you behave towards the pain. Osteoarthritis and depression. When somebody is in a huge amount of pain, debilitating pain, where it stops them walking, stops them moving, and literally stops them in their tracks, it can bring on depression. Because if that is all that you're focused on, what happens is the neurons fire and wire together and create more of that that's not working for you, and moves into a state of depression because you're focused on what you can't do rather than what you can do. And depression is something that happens in the mind. It's when you literally let go of the emotions and the feelings and you move up into the mind. And so you become disconnected with the body because it's in so much pain. And then you move into the thoughts. And depression is looking at past thoughts. And when you are in past thoughts, it is a cycle of vicious pain. And it is a cycle of hopelessness because all you're doing is focusing on what's not working, which moves you into a state of depression and worthlessness and hopelessness. And because the pain can be so severe, it's very difficult. It's a bit like having back pain. No one can see. If you've got a cold, everyone can see and hear that you're sneezing. Everyone can hear and sneeze and see that you've got a tissue. But when there is depression, it is very difficult for lots of people to know what is going on. And many people with osteoarthritis tend to hide the fact that they have that level of pain because they want to appear normal. And so the depression only exacerbates and gets worse. Osteoarthritis and anxiety. There is, when somebody is suffering with osteoarthritis, a level of anxiety about doing things and committing to doing physical things. And that is because there will be an absolute debilitation of movement, whether it's in the hands, whether it's in the hips, the knees, the shoulder, there will be an incredible amount of debilitation, of movement. And the pain will show when the bones fuse together and knock each other, because that's where the connective tissue should be, which is worn away. And because the joints are always in motion and moving, it becomes incredibly difficult to even contemplate getting up and doing something. And so anxiety is when we're focused on future things. If I do this, then this will happen. If I do that, if I don't do that, then I won't get this. And so it's focused on future tense. And somebody who has osteoarthritis is usually focused on things that they don't want to do just in case they can't cope with the pain, or they show themselves up, or they're not able to get back home if they go out. So when somebody is suffering with osteoarthritis and anxiety, it will generally reduce their social interaction and their socialness in terms of what they do in their social time and with friends. They may even withdraw completely from society and go out very rarely because they're not sure if they're going to be able to get back in terms of the walk or in terms of coping with the level of pain. I want to share with you an osteoarthritis, a personal case study. I was diagnosed as having osteoarthritis about a year ago, just over a year ago. And I was suffering with extreme pain for about 2 years before I reached out to the NHS. I'm not the kind of person that's at the doctor's every 5 minutes, and I don't take any form of pharmaceutical medication at all. So the fact that I was in such excruciating pain and not taking any pharmaceutical painkillers was a huge deal for me. I do have an extraordinary high pain threshold that even I was not able to cope. And it sort of happened slowly, and it was something that I didn't appreciate was what it was. And also when I started to feel these extreme levels of pain, because of what I do for a living, I felt very ashamed. And this is something that a lot of people that have osteoarthritis feel. There's a sense of shame in terms of feeling that level of pain. That's very hard to explain to anyone. And it started, I remember it started in the June 2020. And it was sort of on and off. I kind of was limping here and there and doing things, and I kind of noticed it and ignored it. And I thought, what's the matter with me? And I just ignored it like I do when there's anything that goes wrong. And I thought, I've obviously twisted myself or something. And I completely ignored dealing with it. And then in October, at the end of October, it got significantly worse in 2020. To the point, 6 months later, it got really, really bad. And I thought, it was the following year, 2021. And I just thought, what is the matter with me? And I couldn't understand it. And I didn't share it with anyone. I didn't tell anyone. And I just stayed in. And there was a few things that I did because I was afraid to go out. And when I did go out to a gong bath, which I really felt that I needed, a 15-minute walk actually took me an hour, and I was very afraid of whether I could get home, and was on last tubes because I was living in London. And so I still didn't say anything and didn't tell anyone because I come from the practice that if there is something that's very wrong, then it's important not to focus on it too greatly, because when you're focused on something and keep talking about it, it actually gets bigger and it becomes worse. And so I really stayed in my practice of not focusing on it in terms of my external conversation. I didn't really speak about it, and got to the point that it was so painful that I just stayed in, and I stayed in bed. And I stayed in bed for about 3 months and just got up as I needed to do things that I had to do in the home. And it was the most debilitating experience and most frightening experience that I have ever had in my entire life. I kept saying to myself, I do anxiety, I've done stress, and I do depression. They're all mind things. And I do those and I do them well. And what I did was I overcompensated the mind stuff and carried on singing and chanting and dancing. And I carried on doing those things, not so much dancing. I did do that later on, but the singing and chanting. And so I was out of the body and I was feeling okay. And when I did get back into the body to do the physical things of life, it was very difficult. So where am I going with all of this? Because I'm here to share with you a complete transformation of being almost bedridden for 3 months and what happened. Albert Trinity came into my life. I managed to get to a gong bath, and he was doing some incredible things. Albert Trinity, commonly known to his friends as Al, he runs an academy, a sound healing, alchemy sound healing, and he brings in lots of different types of activities. He brings in mantras, he brings in incantation and tapping and Reiki and geometry, sacred geometry. He also brings in the gongs and the drum and the conch and everything else. And when you go to Albert Trinity's gatherings of gong bath, it's a whole evening. It's kind of about 2.5, 3 hours, if you're lucky to get out 3 hours later. It's an incredible cornucopia of healing practices all coming together. And I have a huge thank you to make to Albert Trinity, because at the end of one of those gong baths that I reached out to him and I thought, I need to do this because it'll help me feel better. I couldn't get up. I had left my body and I couldn't get up. And eventually I got up and I couldn't walk. It was in my hip, in my right hip. And he turned round to me and he said, just stay behind. I'm going to give you some extra treatment. And he did. And then he invited me for what became a 4-hour one-to-one healing session where I had all the gongs all around me. It was difficult to walk to get there. It was difficult because it took so long, because it was so painful to walk. But I had focus and I had intention because I knew Albert could help me. And I knew that sound, because we are all vibration, has a big effect. And so I went and I had an incredible 4-hour session with Albert Trinity. And I was able, at the end of that session, to walk up his flight of stairs, whereas I was struggling to walk down 3 steps in my own home. I was able to walk without pain. I was able to do the long walk back to the station without pain. It certainly felt like a miracle. And for the next few days, I was able to walk without pain. And then the thoughts kicked in and things got on top of me. And what happened was everything is thought, everything is energy, and thought is energy. And I was starting to feel, can I do this? Can I do that? And it was the beginning of the journey. And I think I went to see Albert in July of last year, because I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis at the end of June last year. And in the diagnosis, it brought up some things that I reminded myself that I hadn't dealt with. And even though I'm very good at chakra psychology, and this is what I've been doing for 24 years, it's very difficult to self-diagnose when you're in something, when you're actually not focused on anyone else and you're focused in something that you're in. You can't see the problem and resolve the problem while you're in the same consciousness. So it's always important to go out and seek that external help. But when I was advised and given a strict diagnosis after the NHS, bless them, put me through x-rays and an MRI scan and blood tests, they were able to tell me that I had got 2 prolapsed discs in the low back, and I'd also got severe osteoarthritis in the right hip, and they recommended immediate hip replacement, of which I just turned around and said, don't be silly. They also recommended an injection in my back. And I said, oh my gosh, you're not doing that to me. And they said, well, you know, you're in chronic pain. And I said, yeah, I know. Now I know what it is, I will be able to solve it. And that was in July 2022. And in that space, I realized from my training that arthritis is inflammation, is acid, and it's related to unexpressed anger. And as soon as I had the diagnosis, I knew straight away what had caused it. I'd had a very, very big bereavement, a very, very dear and close friend who was also my mentor, passed over. He was a monk and a lama and an incredible man in my life. He passed away in May 2020. I also had another very, very big bereavement of a very close friend who was also a mentor. And both of these people had been around me through my entire speaking career. And his name was Philip Chan. And that knocked me for 6. That really had a huge effect on me. And then I had another very big bereavement of a friend that passed over in May 2022. And there were no funerals. There was no goodbye. There was no way to have closure. And I couldn't find closure. There wasn't closure. And I was very angry about the way that the world was treating people that had died. But at that time, we just had to get on with it. And get on with it I did, to the point that when you don't deal with the emotions and feelings, because you can't, because there isn't a way to find your closure, it went into the body and created pain, acid buildup in the body. And because it's on the right side of my body, the right side is letting go. And because it's in the hip of the right side of my body, it is letting go, and it is letting go of being able to move forward. So I was letting go of the bereavements and letting go of the people that had left my life. But what I was struggling with is moving forward. There was a restriction in moving forward. It felt like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. And this was the time when the world changed in March 2020. And then friends, family, social. My whole life imploded, and I wasn't able to move forward in the way that I wanted to and in the way that I had lived. And I was confined to my four walls in my beautiful, incredibly beautiful property in London, which I didn't realise, as beautiful as it was, it had no outside space. And in June 2020, in that practical way, I thought, right then, I need to sell it because I want a garden. But I wasn't ready to let go of the London life that was there, that I thought was there, that had actually left. It had gone. My London life, my social, my gong baths, my cacao ceremonies, my dancing, all of it had stopped because of our changed times. And as wonderful and as beautiful as my property was in London, it wasn't enough for me anymore. And so I set about selling my property. But in the back of my mind, I kept hoping that it would come back, that I still had a life in London. And I only actually moved in May 2023, so 2 months ago. And that was because I was ready to let go of the life that I had and create a new life. Now, I have moved, I have done training courses, I have travelled, I have done all sorts of incredible things since I have moved. I've been moving boxes, I've been cleaning, I've been up and down ladders, and my home it's got all high ceilings throughout, and my home has a very high, steep set of stairs, which I'm walking up and down many, many times a day. I'm absolutely amazed at where I am now to where I was. And I said to Albert that I would share the transformation when it happened. It was very difficult for me to share the pain and the challenges that I was experiencing because I didn't want to make them bigger. And I wanted to give Albert a testimonial of what he really had done. And I felt that it was important to give him that sharing and that fuller testimonial by being in full disclosure. It's a huge deal for me to actually admit that I had suffered in excruciating pain and I wasn't able to do the things that I loved doing, and I wasn't able to live the life that I was used to, and I became confined and almost bedridden. But this is a story of transformation. This is the fact that sound healing, incantation, gong baths, sacred geometry made a difference. And Albert Trinity changed my life. It changed and moved me forward into the beginning of my recovery, because I was then in a place of admitting that there was a problem. And in the place of having the diagnosis, I was able to deal with the unexpressed emotions of those 3 very big bereavements that I experienced. There are many people that would have this kind of an experience in our changed times. And the reason that I want to share this with you is something as severe and as debilitating as osteoarthritis, where they were absolutely telling me I had to have a hip replacement, is incredulous as to where I am now. Yes, on some days when I've overdone it, there is some pain. And yes, on some days when I've sat down too much at my computer and not moved and, not been doing any exercise, it's had an effect. But in the main, I have far less pain now than I had then. And something else I want to share with you is that during the time of the severe pain, and I still am when I am in some amounts of pain, using arnica and wintergreen, natural, it's like a deep heat without all the chemicals. And that has, what it does is it warms the tendons, it warms the muscle, and it reduces the inflammation. Also, back then, when I was looking at ways for my recovery, I started taking a very good marine fish oil, omega-3 fish oils, because they have more lubrication, and omega-3 is the lubrication that the body needs. I also started taking turmeric capsules, and I started cooking with turmeric in everything: rice, meat, sauces, whatever I was finding to cook. A teaspoonful of turmeric went into it. I started cooking with fresh ginger, and I stopped buying things that were already prepared. Not that I did very much of it. I started making sauces from scratch and making rice from scratch and putting in all the different spices to eliminate the inflammation. And in doing all of those things, I moved to a place of being almost, pretty much, most of the time, pain-free. And it is that I have to be careful. If I overdo it, then I have some pain. But from going from bedridden to very little or no pain was quite an incredible journey. It's been a 3-year transformation. And I'm on the other side of that. And I still have to be careful. I am wondering whether to book an appointment with the NHS and get another X-ray on my back and on my hip, because I would be not too surprised to see, and I'm sure I just need to prove it, that the prolapse discs aren't so bad and the osteoarthritis is not so inflamed. I don't know how it would show up from a medical perspective, but I can share with you that I physically feel and look different because I'm not in as much pain. And I never ever could have contemplated moving boxes and cleaning and being up and down ladders with the kind of pain that I had. And the journey started with Albert Trinity. Look him up. He's in London. He does all sorts of trainings. I didn't want to do any training, learning how to play the gongs, because I absolutely enjoy the experience. And I do so many things. I just wanted to enjoy it and let myself literally sink into the healing experience. Everything is energy and everything is vibration. And I am living proof. Without any pharmaceutical intervention, it is possible to get through the worst kind of pain that you ever could imagine. So I just want to cover some foods that eliminate inflammation: nuts, avocado, spinach, olive oil, orange vegetables and fruits, pineapple, because it's got the bromide, as I mentioned, turmeric, ginger, onions and garlic. Red onions in particular, I've been cooking a lot with red onions and sauces. I've actually chopped up onion and put it into my seasoned rice, and it's made a big difference. Avoid, because these cause inflammation, gluten, so anything white, flour, bread, safflower, sunflower, soy and corn, any processed meats, fried foods, meat and dairy, syrup and soft drinks, and any fast foods. If you are eating pizza, burgers, McDonald's, all the type of fast foods, because there is a lot of preservatives that will cause inflammation. Osteoarthritis, a quote from Donna Mills: "My message is keep moving. If you do, you'll keep arthritis at bay." This is a really key takeaway, is that when you stop moving, if you're in a huge level of pain and you stop moving, which is the natural if you're in a lot of pain, to restrict your movement, it actually creates the joints to seize up and creates even more pain, which is why when you go to bed and you wake up in the morning, it's very hard to move and the pain is more severe because you've been lying still. And so movements, I used to find that if I started walking to go out and do my shopping, it was hard work in the first 5 minutes. And then in the next 5 minutes, it was easier. And on my walk back, it was much easier. And I was in less pain. So the more that you do, the more that you keep your joints moving, the more flexibility and the less the arthritis actually hits you and hurts you and creates that severe tremor, nerve pain that is so common with osteoarthritis. It has been my absolute pleasure to share today with you how osteoarthritis can affect your mental health. My final share with you today on my personal journey is that I didn't feel I could cope to the point that I didn't want to live anymore. And it was one of the reasons I reached out and decided to start training in a course called Suicide and Self-Harm, because I had some of those feelings, and those feelings were not because I couldn't solve it. They were because of my own mental state of being, because I was in so much pain. And we all get to a point where things can get on top of us. It's what we do about it is the next question. There are so many people that have ended their life by suicide because they weren't able to cope mentally, physically with our changed world times. So I commissioned myself to move through this training because I wanted to give back to others what helped me survive and get through this. And I'm now on the other side and living in a very beautiful large property with a garden that needs a gardener and a huge 3-bedroom property, mortgage free. I'm so glad I didn't do anything or contemplate taking any action at the point that I was feeling that level of intense depression and pain. Thank you for your interest and your attention. Please subscribe to USA Global TV and Radio. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube, USA Global TV and Radio channel. You'll find all of the Talking Heads episodes under the playlist Talking Heads. You'll find all of my Talking Heads episodes for 2022 under my name, Caroline Heward, 2022. And you will find all my Talking Heads episodes for this year under my name, Caroline Heward, 2023. Please do reach out to me if I may be of service to you. You can contact me on nomorestress@live.co.uk or call +44 if you're international, 0 if you're local, 07523 120 189. I've been there. I can help you. I've resolved my own debilitating osteoarthritis and the depression and the mental health suffering that I suffered. And if I can do it, and I have the tools and techniques, I can help you resolve how you feel. That is my promise, and that is my guarantee. And the reason I didn't share the suffering is because I wanted to transform the pain so that I could help others transform theirs. I offer a free 30-minute consultation either on Zoom, Skype, or if you're camera shy, by audio call or messenger call if you're international. Thank you. I look forward to helping you bust your stress. Namaste.